Hey everyone, this video serves as my Hatred Assassin rotation guide with some commentary to explain what I'm doing during a parse and why I'm doing what I'm doing. To open, I'm first going to go over gearing. First important thing is hit that accuracy cap, get 758 accuracy. In 198 gear, that means you're going to go with 6 pieces plus an augment. So in my case, I'm using 2 implants, an earpiece, 3 enhancements, and an augment. Unlike Deception, I gear differently for Hatred. For my last 4 enhancements, I like to go with a 2-2 Surge Alacrity ratio. It's because I don't think Hatred benefits as well from the Surge as it does the Alacrity, which is a straight DPS boost instead of an RNG DPS increase. And to coincide with that, I also go with less crit chance. I go with more of the power stats. So I reduce my crit to about 250, about half of what I use in Deception. And I'm still toying with this. I constantly am changing. I used to use even less crit. And constantly adapting and do whatever works best for you in this situation. But this is what I'm currently finding is working best for me. Now, to switch over from gearing to utilities, this is my generic utility setup. This is what I use in fights where I don't need anything specific, or if I'm in story mode, or if I just don't care or I'm parsing. I like my 15-second force speed instead of 20, so I always choose avoidance. For Hatred especially, you don't have any other damage reduction outside your armor other than Nefarious Methods, which reduces your damage incoming by 15% for dots. And usually a dot is an elemental internal thing, so your armor rating's not helping you on that anyway. So yeah, I always choose that 4%. Just, every little bit I think helps. And then of course you're a melee class, you want to be in 4 meters, nothing worse than being kited by a boss, so 15% increase to speed is really helpful. Going to Masterful, I like having the extra shroud time and the extra force speed time. I can get there quicker. If they're further away and the 2 seconds of force speed isn't enough. And the extra shroud time's nice because you get 5 seconds of shroud, and then you get 4 seconds if you stealth out, which is really convenient. It's 9 seconds of shroud, that you could have consecutively. So it's really nice on fights like Bulo. I'll sometimes say fuck it to either the mine carts that are coming in, I'll just stay in DPS during that, or maybe it's the mass barrage, I'll just stay in DPS for that instead of running around trying to avoid stuff, because you can just flat out mitigate it, which is really convenient and nice for your DPS too. Audacity, this is the one I'm quickest to get rid of if I need another slot and I think I need the other ones, and it's because it's harder to spend 3 charges in Hatred than Deception. Your charges are only for Death Field and Demolish, and you're using Demolish about once every 9 seconds, give or take. You're using Death Field once every 15 seconds, and your Recklessness only lasts for 20. So having that 3rd charge, especially if there's multiple targets, and you end up burning all your charges on a Death Field to multiple targets, then it's essentially a wasted charge. So, I do use it because it is a straight DPS increase, and of course it's the only utility that's going to increase your single target DPS, so obviously take it if you can, because more DPS means more likely to kill the boss, but it's not as mandatory as it is in Deception. Then for the heroic, again, I don't always use both, but because of being Hatred especially, you're squishier. And 3.1.2, we saw our heals cut significantly. I get 200 to 300 less HPS in a parse. I don't really know how that translates into a fight because I've kind of stopped using Hatred in fights. But as far as this goes, I like Assassin Shelter just because I'm getting more heals, so it helps with my survivability. I'd rather get, 3,000. 300 heals or 3,030. I can't do math right now in my head, so I probably sound stupid. I'd rather get that extra bit of healing. That might keep me alive than not. Plus, if the healers want my phase walk, it's not necessary, but if it's not going to obscure telegraphs or anything, I'll go ahead and plant my phase walk for them so that they have that healing output too. And then of course Shroud of Madness, just get that extra shroud time. The only things you're going to use Force Cloak for as a Hatred Assassin is A, to save your money on a wipe. Biggest, most convenient thing ever, I love it. B, stealth res somebody, so having that shroud can actually protect you from clears anything on you, so you're not worried about getting popped back out of stealth if there's, a dot or something. So it's nice to have from that standpoint. Plus, it's just an extra shroud, so it's, it's another defensive. And when you're a squishy assassin, having extra defensives is really convenient to staying alive. So now I'm going to go through the rotation shortly. Now, as you saw in my guide on the Drunk Tanks website, it is a long rotation if you try to memorize it. It's 120 abilities after the opener. I don't have it memorized, and don't even try to memorize it yourself. I don't recommend it. There's really no way to memorize it. But what you can do is there's a set of patterns to follow. And those patterns are what makes the Hatred rotation doable and easy to memorize. Now, the opener, just straight up memorize that. It's not hard. The rotation itself, though, what you're going to find in those patterns is, after the opener, I only apply Death Field once in the opener. The first attack out of the opener is Death Field. Now, every pass through through my rotations, Death Field moves back 2 spaces. So let's say I use Death Field after Creeping Terror. That means that the next pass through the rotation, I know that Death Field's going to come off cooldown before Creeping Terror, and I'm going to use it before Creeping Terror. Then the next pass through the rotation, because I maintain a 3 GCD spread between Discharge and Creeping Terror, I know I'm going to use Death Field after Discharge. And then, if you can predict it, the next time through you're going to use Death Field before Discharge, and it's always going to be like that. And the same can be said for Leeching Strike. There are 2 positions in one pass and 1 position in another pass, depending on if you're on odds or evens, where you will use Leeching Strike. You're never going to memorize them, but you're going to get a feel for it, when Leeching Strike comes up. And, that feel for it is how you're going to learn the rotation. So it's purely through repetition. And that's the best way to learn this rotation. And trying to understand the priority for the melee attacks, which is between Thrash, Saber Strike, and Assassinate, again, is through repetition. If you see that you're going to use a Death Field, then a Creeping Terror, then let's say a Leeching Strike, I don't know if that's actually going to happen at all. I could be wrong. But if that's going to happen in the rotation, let's say, well, that's going to be bad if you decide, because that's going to have a melee attack after the Discharge and before that 3 rotation set. Or pardon me, 3 ability set. So, you want to get a feel for those spots where you're going to need the extra force, so you're going to Saber Strike, or that you're going to have a few melee attacks coming up, so you can start doing some thrashes, or when your procs are going to kind of come up, so when to assassinate, or be ready to, and make sure you have enough force to do that. You have a large window to use it, so it's not a big a deal. It doesn't have to be used as soon as it procs. The bigger challenge to Hatred, I think, is the execute phase, where things become hectic. You do more damage, you get more assassinates because you can use it on cooldown and not just proc, and you want to best maintain the rotation as much as possible, but at the same time, because of the way procs are, because of the way cooldowns are, and because you don't want to delay any cooldowns of things like Death Field and Leeching Strike, you don't want to delay cooldowns of Assassinate, or else you could end up missing an Assassinate window where you could do an Assassinate, then a procs, and you can immediately Assassinate after. You want to maintain using those as quickly as possible when they come off cooldown, while maintaining dot uptime. It's rather challenging to do, and you're going to find yourself almost never thrashing, but you have to once in a while because it procs your 6-piece set bonus. So you're going to use a lot of Saber Strikes then, so you'll see me probably mess up the rotation in the execute phase. It's not going to be done to the best of my ability, because it never is. And really it comes down to repetition. Just practice it, get to understand how that part of the rotation is going to be, to understand how to really take best advantage of it as possible when going through it. So I'll go ahead and show you the rotation. Quick thing actually, with the opener. Demolish, they reduced that in 3.1.2. It's not 30 meters anymore, it's 10. I talked about this in my Deception video with Crushing Darkness. Turns out plenty of bosses, especially if you stealth out, you're not going to pull them at 10 meters. So you can get within 10 meters, Sword Squadron, Underlurker, I believe Bulo. Haven't really tested it on too many other bosses. But you can get within 10 meters of them and, start from stealth to be safe, but, as Hatred Assassin, it's not required to be in stealth in the start of the fight, and precast Demolish, and you can do that, and it's basically free DPS, because by the time, if you time it with the tank's call, 3, 2, then you start casting Demolish, 1, 0, Demolish hits, your GCD's already spent, you're already onto your next GCD without even wasting time, so it's free DPS basically, and you want to try and do that. Now let's say you can't demolish. You can't get in range to do that without pulling. It's too risky. That's fine. I personally recommend replacing Creeping Terror in there. Don't use it until they, until they call. Otherwise, you're going to pull, and you don't want to pull. But the thing with Creeping Terror is, even though you're going to end up clipping it in the rotation, it's better to have some DPS than no DPS. And so basically, in Creeping Terror, then force speed into range, and then go into your opener from there with Leeching Strike. And like I said, some DPS is better than no DPS. The other thing is, you're going to see me on this opener, I'm going to use Recklessness before my first Demolish. Personally, you saw me put this in my guide, use it before the first Death Field. I'm just going to do it because it's what I'm kind of used to right now, but it's better to spend it before that first Death Field, because let's say Death Field, you use a charge, your next Demolish, you use a charge. But let's say that next Demolish before Death Field doesn't use a charge. That's actually ideal if you're using Audacity, because then hopefully that Death Field before that will use the charge, and you want Recklessness to blow charges on Death Field more than Demolish, because it's gonna, Death Field critting is gonna be more damage than Demolish critting. So that's kind of that little point, but I'm just gonna use it before Demolish just because it's easier for me. I'm used to it, and I want to make sure I can provide commentary while doing the parse. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the parse now. So as you see, I'm gonna pop Recklessness, then go into Demolish, and the key is Leeching Strike immediately. So I'll go ahead and start. So after Leeching Strike, Adrenal. After Death Field, Overcharge, Discharge, proc my 6-piece. It's the hardest hitting Assassinate you can get. That was actually kind of weak. I'm going to Saber Strike just for force management purposes. So now I just entered the rotation. I'm going to wait to spend that Assassinate now because double Relic proc. Leeching Strike always before Demolish. Creeping Terror. I got a GCD before Death Field, so I'm going to build up Force. Make sure you use Demolish there, Leeching Strike on cooldown. And then back to reapplying dots. So as you see, I've been using Death Field and Leeching Strike on cooldown. And it's the key to maintaining, efficiency in your parse. Now, Demolish is proc, but you can wait up to 2 GCDs before you use it without, clipping or causing any issues. So as you see right here, by the time I hit Demolish, I didn't actually clip it. And so the timings of the procs don't get messed up, which is nice. Death Field will be before Discharge, so I'm just going to build up some force there, just to be safe. Assassinate can wait till after I apply everything. Just kind of waiting to see if I can proc, but I couldn't proc the second Relic. Now, Demolish again will wait 2 GCDs before I use it because higher priority things are on cooldown. And as you notice here, even though Demolish is going, I don't actually clip it. Overcharge on cooldown. And you've probably started to notice a pattern by now. Now since I'm getting close to execute phase there, I kind of used Discharge a little late, unfortunately. So that was my bad. Because I'm getting close to execute phase, you want to... If you do have a proc, there you go. Well, see, I missed a Assassinate there. That ended up getting shadowed by a proc. And as you're already noticing, my timings of abilities are already off. Which is kind of the challenge of the execute phase. Discharge wears off, but I don't have the force to use it, so I had to Saber Strike instead. And Demolish is going to wait again because of higher priority abilities. So I'm going to go ahead and burn my Adrenal now before it's too late. Now I'm not going to reapply Creeping Terror because it's too late for rotation. There you go. That was actually a better than average parse for Hatred. Now I screwed up quite a few things in there. As you saw, I used a discharge 1 GCD too late when I was transitioning toward execute phase, and of course in the execute phase I got jumbled up like crazy, and that's kind of the challenge of it. And the idea is to maintain the best possible rotation you can in the execute phase, get those assassinates going. Now you saw in the as I transitioned to that execute phase, assassinate was available, and I decided to use an ability instead of assassinate, which was kind of tough timing because, you know, I was already pressing the ability, then I hit 29%. But because of that, then Assassinate or Bloodletting procced, which means I basically lost an Assassinate window, because if I had used Assassinate there and then it procced during that GCD, it would have been on cooldown and I could have used it, or off cooldown, and I could have used Assassinate again immediately. And that's the thing I'm kind of talking about with trying to get those Assassinates used as quickly as possible. Because that's what's going to help increase DPS. You know, you still want to maintain using Death Field, you want to maintain using Leeching Strike, you want to keep those dots at as much 100% uptime as possible. And that's kind of the challenge that you got to balance there. Now, for Hatred, you're going to see a little bit of a different APM than what you saw in my Deception video. For Hatred, you see I got 41.6 APM. I think 41.5 is a good average APM with 240 Alacrity. That's a good target regardless of your gear. I've hit 42 sometimes. I really don't know what causes me to switch between 41.5 to 42, but somewhere between there or 41.5 bare minimum is what your target APM should be around. As far as damage goes, I find that Hatred now averages somewhere around 4,500, give or take. I've seen, you know, the lower crit ratio ones where I'm at about 4,450, and I've seen the higher crit ones where I'm hitting 4,550. I find hitting 4,600 with my 198 gear, and it's pretty much all 198 minus 3 arm rings or 192, or 4 arm rings or 192. And of course, I only have a 192 hilt, but I find getting that 4,600 is kind of a challenge now, and it's more of a lucky crit hit. The other thing is HPS. You're not going to see the 900 to 1,000 HPS on a parse anymore, where you're doing over 200k self heals, and you know, unfortunately that sucks because those passive self heals, they don't generate threat. Unfortunately, they can never be. I don't know if you've noticed this when using things like Star Parse or Parsec, they can never be effective. Only Overcharged Saber causes effective heals, but you know, you're losing that 300 HPS. You know, on a boss fight, that's going to be probably more because you're going to have times where you're out of range, so you know, your effectiveness is lost because of the reduced range of Assassin for Hatred at least. And so, you know, your healers are going to have to put more heals on you, and because you don't have the damage reduction that Deception has, you know, you're a lot squishier in that aspect. But anyway, so that was the rotation video. Hopefully I was able to guide you through it kind of decently. I kind of struggled a little bit, messed up a few things in the parse, but I think for this one time I'm not going to do another take. So hopefully that was helpful, and have a good one.